Following my wife's infidelity with my cousin and the subsequent birth of their child, my entire family ostracized me. They concealed the truth while I endeavored to achieve success. Now, they seek reconciliation. There is a significant context to this situation, and I kindly request your patience as I elucidate the entire scenario to my family. Currently, I am 44 years old, male, and have been married for 10 years. My wife, who is 41 years old, and I have been together for 13 years. We are proud parents of an 8-year-old son and are content with our lives. However, this is not my first marriage. I'm married at the age of 22, but unfortunately, that marriage ended in divorce within 3 years for reasons that I am still not aware of. My ex-wife, whom I affectionately call Amy, has been with me since we were in middle school. We were childhood sweethearts, and upon graduating college and securing stable employment, we decided to marry. The initial years were harmonious, but after a certain point, things began to deteriorate between us. Despite my efforts to reignite the passion, I noticed a lack of interest on her part. I made every effort to win her back, but just a few weeks before our third wedding anniversary, she presented me with divorce papers and informed me that she had made up her mind. I sought to improve our marriage, hoping to find a compelling reason to continue despite our long-standing relationship. However, she could not provide any, citing a lack of love for me. Despite my distress, I had no choice but to proceed with the divorce, as I did not wish to prolong her unhappiness by forcing her to remain with me. Our joint assets were minimal, simplifying the process. Following the divorce, I did not see her again. I heard from a few friends that after the divorce was finalized, she moved to a different city and cut off all contact with everyone. This is a common occurrence, but what was particularly unusual was that even my family stopped speaking to me around the time of the divorce. They should have been supportive of me during such a difficult time, but instead, they began to distance themselves from me. After the divorce was finalized, I made a genuine effort to maintain contact with them, but I realized that I had been blocked everywhere. I even tried to visit them a few times, but neither my parents nor my sister ever opened the door to me. It was all very strange, and it was a difficult time for me, so it really hit me hard for a couple of years after the divorce. I couldn't even bring myself to do anything and ended up quitting my job and sitting at home unemployed for a few months. But I'm incredibly lucky that even in such difficult times, I had friends by my side who decided to motivate me to do better and try to move on. Following the divorce, my family was not there for me, and my friends stepped in to support me. This experience inspired me to pursue my dream of opening a restaurant, which I had always wanted to do but postponed due to financial considerations and the needs of my family during our marriage. After the divorce, I decided to proceed independently and adopted the name suggested by my parents. With the assistance of my friends, I secured investors, developed a business model, and within a few years, I opened my first restaurant. It took me nearly 4 years to recover from the divorce, and 2 years later, I met my wife. We met through mutual friends at a party, and she expressed her admiration for my restaurant. That's how we started talking. After 3 years of dating, I decided to take another chance on love and propose to her. Now, 10 years later, we have a son. Over the past few years, not only has my personal life improved, but my professional life has also flourished, thanks to my career success. It all began with a restaurant, but we gradually expanded due to the success of the first restaurant. Currently, I am the CEO of my own hospitality group, which owns a chain of restaurants and hotels. We are currently planning to expand even more, aiming to become more popular outside of the state as well. Despite the challenges, I have worked diligently to achieve my current position. Therefore, when I was invited for an interview recently, I believe it was a sign of success. I agreed, but I had no idea that it would lead to such a storm in my life. My family decided to contact me after watching the interview on the news. The channel that had picked it up was moderately popular, so I hadn't really expected my family to have watched it. And even if I had, I did not expect them to show up in my office. It's not really private information where my workplace is, so it must have been quite easy for them to find me. But anyway, it was still quite inappropriate for them to show up at my workplace and demand to see me during work hours. Regrettably, 3 days prior, that's precisely what they did. It was quite peculiar for me to encounter them after such a long absence, as I was occupied with work. However, the receptionist informed me that my family was waiting outside. Initially, I assumed she was referring to my wife and son, which would have been unusual since my wife was at work and my son was at school. But she clarified that it was my parents and sister who were there to see me. It was then that I began to struggle with processing the situation, and I informed the receptionist that I would meet them later, but for now they would have to leave. However, they did not leave and began to cause a scene. So I had to intervene because I did not want security to throw them out of the building before I got a chance to speak to them and find out what on earth was happening. So I went to see them in the lobby, and as soon as they saw me, they started acting like nothing had changed since the last time I saw them, which was almost 20 years ago. They immediately began to praise me, expressing their admiration for my success and the inspiration my story provided. It felt strange to hear them say that, as they were part of my story. I attempted to dismiss their comments by saying I needed to return to work, but then they mentioned that they had also seen my family die. During my interview, I mentioned my wife and son, highlighting their support throughout my journey. The channel had compiled a few family photos, which I assumed they were referring to. They expressed a desire to meet my wife and grandson as soon as possible, as they had been away for a long time. At that moment, they criticized me for not making enough effort to reconnect with them after the divorce, suggesting I should have tried harder. This realization prompted me to listen rather than dismiss them, and I chose to sit in the lobby with them to understand the events of the past. During our conversation, I learned the true reason behind Amy's decision to divorce me and the reasons my family had abandoned me. You might have guessed it by now. Amy had been unfaithful to me, and I was unaware of it because my parents had been assisting her in concealing it. Don't be too quick to judge them, as they had their reasons, at least according to them. These were valid reasons to help their daughter-in-law cheat on their son. It turns out that the person Amy was having an affair with was my cousin, my father's older brother's son. Upon learning the truth, everything suddenly made sense. It explained why they had supported her, why I had been excluded from family gatherings for years, and why I had been unjustly ostracized. My cousin, let's go. Carl was a spoiled, entitled brat, and I had always hated him. Unfortunately, because his mother had passed away when he was just 6 months old, his father and the rest of the family seemed to think that he should get a free pass for everything he did. Throughout his entire life, nobody had told him how to behave, and he always got away with everything. It did not help that my uncle was my dad's boss, since he had started the family business and my dad had joined him later. After our marriage, since Carl had decided that he wanted to be with Amy, and she had also wanted the same thing, my family had no other choice but to help them out because they couldn't risk my uncle's anger. Of course, putting the relationship with me at risk was something easily doable, and so that's what they did. They told me that after the divorce, my uncle made it very clear that he didn't want anybody from the family to have any contact with me at all, including my parents and sister. Apparently, they had tried to protest, but then Amy had announced that she was pregnant with my kid, and if they ever wanted to have any contact with their grandkid, they would have to cut me off. Either way, I was never notified of the fact that Amy was pregnant when she had filed for a divorce, and another time she hadn't been showing either, so I couldn't have guessed. Neither had she been staying with me, since she had moved out long before the divorce was finalized, so I had no idea that I had become a father long before my son was born. And apparently, I have a daughter who is almost 20 now, but has never even known me and thinks that Carl is her real father. This was the narrative my parents shared with me about the events of the past, and I struggled to comprehend it at the time. It felt like a story, and I had to pinch myself to realize that it was my reality. My family had essentially severed ties with me in favor of their grandchild and job security, as they believed. However, in my opinion, they severed ties because they were cowards. They could have easily approached me with the truth and allowed me to handle the situation, but they chose to be afraid of my father's brother, as if he could actually do any harm to them other than firing my father from the business. Even then, my father could have easily retaliated by filing a lawsuit. As for never informing me about Amy's pregnancy and the fact that I have a daughter, I cannot think of any excuse for that. For 20 years, they kept this secret until they discovered that I was thriving in life. Now, they are feeling remorseful and wish to make amends. Regrettably, I was able to discern their insincerity. After they had shared their story, I informed them that I required their departure, as I found it impossible to forgive their actions. At the moment, I tried to remain civil, considering we were in the lobby of my workplace, and I did not want to escalate the situation. However, I could not rely on them to reciprocate. When I requested their departure, they immediately began to complain, insisting that I should consider their perspective and the challenges they had faced. I informed them that I was aware that they had only contacted me now due to my success, and they wanted a share of it. However, they vehemently denied this, and my sister even claimed that my success was due to their suggestion of my restaurant's name. She implied that I had relied on their support throughout the years, which was not the case. I had accomplished everything independently with the assistance of my friends, not them. The idea that suggesting a name made them deserving of credit for my success was absurd, and I found it quite humorous. I informed her that if she and her parents did not leave immediately, they would be removed from the building. Despite their objections, I insisted on their departure, emphasizing that I would not tolerate further interference. They argued that they would not leave until the issue was resolved, but I was not interested in further discussion. Consequently, I had them escorted out by security. They were understandably upset and attempted to justify their actions, but I firmly believe they had a choice and were now responsible for their consequences. It has not been difficult for them to live for the past 20 years without having seen me and my family. I am confident that they will be able to manage it in the future as well. 3 days have passed since then, and they have not ceased their attempts to contact me. They have been texting me on social media, sending emails to my work address, and even showing up at my office, although they have not yet entered. There's been a noticeable shift in their behavior, as they now only apologize to me. All their messages are filled with apologies, and even when they stand outside my workplace, they appear genuinely upset and wait for me to stop. However, I simply drive by and ignore them. It has reached a point where I almost feel sorry for them. To be honest, I have consulted with my wife regarding this matter. Regardless of my personal decision, we must consider the well-being of my daughter, whom I recently discovered. We have been deliberating on whether to attempt to contact her or not. Additionally, we must address our family, who are awaiting another opportunity to communicate with me. My wife suggests that, for the sake of clearing the air, I should reach out to them and invite them to our home for a discussion. She believes that this could help alleviate the toxicity and improve my emotional well-being. However, I personally have no interest in engaging with them. I prefer to ignore them until they resolve their issues on their own, primarily due to my current inability to handle the situation, compounded by recent revelations and ongoing challenges. We are struggling to determine the best course of action. I would like to inquire about Ida's reluctance to allow my parents to communicate with me after a 20-year absence. It has been a week and 3 days since my last post, and my wife and I have decided to continue ignoring my family. Fortunately, they have not appeared at my workplace for the past few days, possibly due to fatigue or intimidation by security. I am relieved that they have not shown up. Once they stopped showing up, I found it much easier to stop thinking about them. So I guess it was just their faces that were making me feel bad about whatever I was doing. However, now I don't feel guilty about ignoring their messages anymore. They can keep apologizing all they want, but it's not going to change anything because the fact of the matter is that they have failed me as a family, and no amount of apologizing is ever going to make that right again. They have still continued to send messages to me from various accounts and email addresses, and at this point I'm not even bothering to block them anymore, because what's the point? They're just gonna not create new ones to try and apologize to me, and I'm gonna now just keep ignoring all of it? Anyway, let's see how long they can keep this up and how sorry they are about everything. Transitioning to another issue we were grappling with. My wife and I were completely at a loss on how to handle the situation with my daughter. We have identified her name and her college, thanks to my parents' information. My assistant has located her social media profiles, but I have yet to take any action. I am uncertain about the appropriateness of my involvement and am unclear on how to inform her of our biological relationship. Since she is not a minor, I cannot simply demand custody. I would prefer to avoid involving her in this matter, as my discovery about her has led to a loss of respect for her and my entire family. They are all spineless cowards, and I have no desire to be associated with them. However, I cannot deny my daughter's biological connection to me, regardless of her upbringing. If anyone has advice on how to approach this conversation or whether I should even be having it, please let me know. I would also like to extend my gratitude to everyone who responded to my initial post and offered their insights. Their contributions were invaluable, and I am hopeful that you can provide further assistance in this matter. Now, update 2. After reviewing the comments from my previous update 3 days ago, my wife and I have decided to proceed. There was no need to wait for the perfect moment or opportunity to communicate with our daughter. We decided to take the initiative and address the situation. Since she resides in a different state, we deemed it inappropriate to travel to her, so we opted to send her a message first. We reached out to her on Instagram, explained everything to her as kindly as possible, and now we are awaiting her response. I am certain that it will be a complex process to come to terms with it. The situation is complex for me, and I am in awe of my wife's unwavering support, especially considering my efforts to reconnect with my long-lost daughter from my previous marriage to a Swiss woman. I am acutely aware of the complex emotions involved, but I am determined to make amends. I fervently hope that my daughter will initiate contact with me, as I am eager to establish a relationship with her. I am also concerned about my parents' absence from my workplace, which has been a long time. Yesterday, they sent me a lengthy email expressing their regret and a sincere desire to mend our relationship. They requested one final opportunity from me. They assured me that they would not contact me again, but they would wait for me to initiate contact. I am relieved that they have taken the hint and understand that I do not wish to engage with them at this time. I am currently dealing with numerous responsibilities, and the last thing I need is additional drama. If I feel ready or wish to communicate with them in the future, I will do so independently. However, given the recent revelations, it seems unlikely that this will occur anytime soon. Knowing the true reason for their silence for 20 years has significantly complicated the situation, leaving me feeling betrayed and hurt, which I do not believe will dissipate quickly. The positive outcome of this situation was discovering my daughter. I fervently hope she will consider giving our relationship a chance. I have not yet informed my son about this, in case she declines to communicate with us. I wouldn't want to instill false hope in him. However, if things progress positively, he might find a sister in her, and I might finally get to know the daughter I never knew existed. I am currently experiencing a range of emotions and am making a concerted effort to maintain composure. Update 3. Hi. Approximately 2 weeks ago, I reached out to my daughter via social media, conveying my identity and our familial connection. Following this, I awaited her response for 2 weeks, and today, I received a text message from her. She informed me that she had discussed my message with her mother, who had confirmed that I was her biological father. This revelation was a significant shock to her, as she had been led to believe that Carl was her biological father for the past 20 years. She also learned the true circumstances surrounding her mother's relationship with me and expressed a desire to meet me and my family. This weekend, we are all flying out to visit her since she is currently estranged from her family and lacks the financial means to visit us. She didn't provide specifics, but when she confronted Amy about the message she had received, Amy initially denied it. However, she was eventually compelled to confess the truth. I have yet to hear from Amy, and I sincerely hope she does not reach out to me, as I am not inclined to engage in conversation with her. However, my family broke their promise immediately and began attempting to communicate with me as soon as they discovered my contact with my daughter. My uncle was furious that I had learned about it, and understandably so, as they had spent 20 years attempting to conceal it from me to avoid any potential disruption in their lives. Now that I was aware, my uncle held my parents accountable for the entire situation. My father no longer works for him, and he has established his own independent business. However, he remains terrified of his older brother and has implored me to inform my uncle or Carl that they were not involved in the matter. I discovered it independently. Even if I did that, I think it's highly unlikely that anyone would believe it because they're the only people likely to do something like this. Since I haven't been close to most of my family, and they haven't bothered to speak to me in the past 20 years, it is amusing how they are acting so desperately to maintain their relationship with my uncle. However, I am indifferent to their actions. It was their actions that led to a 20-year estrangement from my daughter. Therefore, I believe this is the least I can do for them. Greetings to everyone. Today, my family and I had the opportunity to meet my daughter for the first time. Initially, the encounter was somewhat strange, but it quickly turned into a deeply emotional experience. The most remarkable aspect was the realization that she appears to be a kind and good person, despite being raised by two individuals known for their cruelty and horribleness. It seems they have done a commendable job in raising her, or perhaps it is her inherent nature. Regardless, she appears to be an intelligent and mature young woman. We engaged in a lengthy discussion about Amy's relationship with her father, and she revealed that they were initially resistant to her meeting us. However, she was unconcerned about their disapproval, as she had already discovered the truth and no longer cared about their opinions. As she is their only child, she does not believe she will abandon them forever, but she plans to distance herself for a period to process her feelings. She also expressed a desire to establish a relationship with me, acknowledging her current mental state. Despite this, we had a pleasant time together, and she seemed to enjoy the company of my wife and her half-brother. We shared a meal together, during which we discovered that my parents, her grandparents, had maintained a connection with her throughout her life. She found it peculiar how emotionally invested they were in her, considering they were not her biological grandparents, but rather her grandfather's brother's family. However, after uncovering these truths, she now understands their attachment to her. Similarly, I have also come to view them differently. Despite my age difference, I can empathize with her feelings. She has been lied to her entire life by those she considered to be the closest to her. Nonetheless, we both recognize the need to address these issues and strive for a better future. I am optimistic that the future will be brighter, and we will make the most of this opportunity to correct past wrongs. I am content with the situation, regardless of past actions, as long as we have the chance to make things right.